two critical issues that we are presently deliberating on. My name is Lurit Yugusuk from the Youth for Tax Justice Network, and as I speak, please note that my submission is more or less an invitation for reflection for all the stakeholders that we have in the room, all the way from the member states and the Workstream 3 committee to youth representatives and civil society. So first is to acknowledge that the Youth for Tax Justice Network welcomes the idea of a UN-managed database and other complementary databases. The reason for this is because they play an integral role in ensuring effective global tax governance and international cooperation. So let's go through this together. Let's begin with Clause M. So as the committee considers the governance architecture of this potential UN-managed database, it would be very useful to take a comprehensive view spanning the key issues that have been written there, all the way from financial implications to what oversight will look like, what data governance in this case will look like, participation, and even long-term sustainability. So on the financial implication side of things, we note that a robust global database demands very stable and multi-year financing. So member states could potentially explore various concepts in this case when it comes to financing. And I'm thinking of this in terms of also the conversation that we were having last week on critical questions of what financing within the entire convention will look like. So will this be hybrid financing models which combine assessed contributions with voluntary funds to probably just reduce some kind of reliance on any single source of financing? Will this look like cost sharing with regional tax organizations that already exist and are heavily weighing into the conversation around global tax governance? And this would be very critical, especially for the data gathering phases. And then the third part to really think about critically is this going to be happening in phased rollouts? Will it start with pilot countries and then expand to global participation as capacity grows over the years? And then the second part is really about management responsibilities and oversight. So we note that clear delineation of roles will strengthen a lot of credibility within the conversation of what these particular databases will look like. So key questions we have to the committee really and to all the stakeholders is which UN entity will manage the daily operations of this particular database? How then will responsibilities be divided between data submission, validation, analysis, and even publication? Should some kind of independent technical advisory panel be established to guarantee some kind of neutrality in this case? Is this something that we need to think about in this conversation? And beyond this is, would a regional co-chairing model where every region participates in oversight play a role in ensuring the institutionalization of this particular database? And then if you look at the conversations we've been having, we've also been talking a lot about the COP, which is critical in the conversations that we're trying to have. So how do we see their role coming into play within the consolidation and overall management of the databases? Now when we move on to Clause N, which is exploring whether other types of databases could be considered, for us we're really thinking about it in terms of one, data governance. We note that the question of transparency and accessibility comes strongly into play here, especially for countries in the global south. And as mentioned by ATAF and other countries as well, we have seen that information asymmetry is one of the key barriers to successful institutionalizations of very many complementary and supplementary databases that exist within the frame of tax cooperation. So at that point, how do we reconcile these particular issues within this conversation? And then how do we also reconcile the confidentiality clauses within elements such as APAs and transparency in this particular UN-managed database that we're thinking about? And how do we also think about this in the frame of the various domestic laws that we have? And then the other critical question is, how do we reconcile state-managed beneficial ownership databases that we've seen ourselves talk about a lot with this particular database that we're trying to bring on board? And then the last part of my submission is really about the development realities, which really have direct implications on data collection, analysis, packaging, and really just how we're looking at how data has been playing out within the idea of tax dispute resolution and prevention in itself. So beyond this is to also recognize that there have been a lot of data gaps in various countries, especially least developing countries. So how then is that factored in the institutionalization of this particular database? What do you see that as, and how do we ensure that these realities are factored in the design of this database, its institutionalization, and any other part that makes sure that this database works effectively for global tax governance and international cooperation? Thank you, Chair. I submit.